Welcome to Dear Rockstar podcast. On the podcast, we always want to talk about people who have built their life around their why and are starting things. And so today I'm excited to get to share a good friend of mine, Bess Auer, with you. And you've got so many ventures going. Let's see if I can try to remember them. There's Florida Swim Network.
Yep.
1. There is Blog Talk TV.
Yep.
2. And there's Florida BlogCon.
Absolutely.
And you probably got like 3 or 4, a few hidden.
We're good right there for right now.
Right. So go ahead and tell the viewer or the listener a little bit about your ventures and what you're up to. Just a little, and then we'll move back into how you got started.
Sure. So the first one you mentioned, Florida Swim Network. So it's we started off as a website that live streams competitive swim meets. My husband's a swim coach. My son was a competitive swimmer, stuck poolside, and boring swim meets. Sorry, guys, but swim meets can be really boring. You're just watching back and forth. So I'm like,
they're in the water, right?
I got to do something. So we being the blogger, I decided, why don't I try live streaming it? And we had an instant audience. And so we kind of built the website around this idea that we live stream swim meets, everything from 10 and unders up through Olympians. So,
wow.
And Florida's a great state for competitive swimming. It's one of the big 3 states, California and Texas, and so we have a lot of high interest.
Okay.
So right now we're in the Olympic year, so we're gearing up for Olympic trials in Nebraska, and then 2016 we'll be in Rio for the Olympics, covering all the swimmers and coaches from Florida who are there competing.
So do you go to each of the meets?
We do.
Okay.
We do.
So give us some idea of how many people, subscribers, like how does this, what's the model?
Yeah, so first we have a website, so a blog site, and we have anywhere from 150 to 200,000 page views a month.
Which is a big deal. Like we stop for a minute and go, big deal.
Yeah, and we're excited about that. Plus, we only cover swimming in the state of Florida. But the nice thing about it is
it's a
Florida,
micro niche.
It is a micro niche, but Florida is so international. So it's a very transient state. So we have a lot of families that have just recently moved here that have family back home somewhere else. And so their loved ones get to tune in and watch their kids swim. In fact, one of the first meets that we did, we had a family, the Ortizes, come up to us. And the dad started crying because he said, this is the first time his parents, had ever seen their grandchildren swim.
Yeah,
and he said they never thought they would be able to see him swim. So that meant a lot to us. I mean, it really sounds funny, competitive swimming, and I don't swim, but it's become my passion, connecting and being able to tell these swimmers' stories. So
interesting. So swimming isn't your passion, but what has become your passion?
Yeah. So all right. So perfect example right now. There's a swimmer named Caleb Dressel. We've known Caleb since he was this big, and he's always been a good swimmer, a little high energy kid, and he has just grown up. And last night at the SEC Championships, he swims now for the University of Florida. He just set his second American record. And so what an American record is, the fastest in the world. Fastest ever swim in history in his second event within like 2 days. And to watch this kid that we knew grow up into this amazing swimmer and this just amazing young man. And he had on the side of his cheek, he wrote, you know how the football players write stuff? He had McCool written. And it was so much fun to be able to tell the story how he was wearing that for one of his beloved high school teachers that is fighting cancer. And it just gives you goosebumps hearing these stories of these kids, because I know from an insider's perspective how hard they work, how hard they train, and just to see this hard work paying off. I mean, I'm a sucker for any type of story like that. And
Story is your passion.
And it's so much fun for me to tell those stories.
Okay, so that's Florida Swim Network. Right. And then tell us a little bit about Blog Talk TV.
Yeah, so Blog Talk TV actually came out of my third venture, or my third project, which is the Florida Blogger and Social Media Conference.
You are the serial entrepreneur of the day.
I am, but they all kind of go together.
They all go together. But they're like siblings or cousins or aunts.
So let me skip forward to the Florida Blogger and Social Media Conference, because that came first.
Okay.
So I was a blogger here in Orlando back in 2009. There were other bloggers that had been blogging far longer than me, but it was new to me, and I wanted to meet other bloggers and connect with them and learn what they knew. So I wanted to go to a blogging conference, and there really weren't any here in Orlando. I could fly to New York or to Las Vegas or someplace like that to take time off I was teaching full time, to go to those conferences, but I couldn't afford to. And most bloggers can't afford to travel and stay in a hotel for a week, missing their day job. So I thought, what can I do? And then light bulb, why don't I go around to those great bloggers I know here and ask them if they will come and share their messages and share their best practices with how they built up to be the bloggers that they are.
So problem, I'll have one myself with all these people.
So the first one I did, I was teaching 6th grade English at this little tiny school that was K through 6. In our little elementary school gym, it was the maintenance guy and I out setting up the tables, and we had just enough tables where we could fit 100 people. So we advertised it, just word of mouth, sold out that first year very, very quickly. And everybody loved it. People were there sharing their best practices.
Was this your first business?
Yeah. I've been a teacher up until then. That was my first solo venture, just me trying to do something.
And it sells out.
Well, thank goodness, yes. Thank goodness. Well, I was filling a void. If you can fill a void with what people need, then it makes it much easier. If there were already a lot of blogging conferences, I probably never would have made it. I just happened to be lucky and realized that there was this void that needed to be filled.
Well, lucky, but you were also discerning, right? You saw the need, and then you went out and talked to everyone else. So you had some validation before you just threw this whole thing.
And that was the thing. I met with the bloggers I wanted to have speak, and I said, if I were to do a blogging conference, what do you think we should do? Because they had actually been to some blogging conferences. They were full-time bloggers at that time, and so they kind of gave their mentoring advice.
Right.
And I got them on board ahead of time. So it really didn't feel like a solo venture, even though it was. I had a whole team of bloggers. So how many years have
you had Florida Blog?
We've done 5 now, and we've sold out every year. We've had to move locations because we've grown so much bigger. We went to the Orlando Science Center where they could accommodate 250 bloggers. Outgrew that, and now we're at Full Sail University. And they've been great partners to host, and they meet our needs wonderfully. So,
okay, so out of that came
Blog Talk TV. Yes, so FLBlogCon, which is the Florida Blogger Conference, is only once a year. We wanted to figure out a way to kind of share that knowledge and highlight and feature bloggers year-round. So we originally decided, we're bloggers. We're telling these bloggers they should try live streaming. Why don't we live stream a show? So we set up in my kitchen because we couldn't afford a set. I partnered with a crew that came in, and they set up their cameras and everything, and we had bloggers come to my house, and I got another blogger to co-host with me, Ben Reed.
Kitchen talk. It was time.
Well, the big joke is because I don't cook. And we always laugh that my kitchen should actually be a library.
I feel better about myself now.
So at least I got some use out of it. So they would come in.
That's how it started.
That's how it started. It was just kind of this getting together and doing a live stream show. And it caught the attention of, I would share, hey, we'd live stream another show with another blogger, and I'd share it to Facebook and tweet it out. And it caught the eye of a television producer in Virginia, of all places. And he's like, we're looking for interactive content. Can you tape some new ones and make them TV broadcast quality and let me have them? So that was set up. So we originally had our first season on Cox Media, Cox Cable.
Yeah.
And then Bright House wanted it as well. So they picked up starting with season 2. And so they have it on their on-demand. Yeah, so we do 20 episodes a season, so 20 bloggers. And we generally film a few times a year. We used to do once a month and try and get 3 or 4 bloggers in at a time. So it just varies, getting the production crew together as well as my co-host and then the guests.
Yes.
You can imagine.
Right.
It can be difficult to schedule, so it takes quite a bit of organization on our time to get that done.
So you're in your second season of that?
We just completed our second season.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So that's
go back to so you started your whole journey down being an entrepreneur, being a starter with seeing the gap in the market for the conference.
Yeah.
And then each of your other ventures has come out of this?
Yeah, so I was a classroom teacher. I taught English for 17 years.
Which is the most entrepreneurial thing, right? I think teachers are very entrepreneurial.
Teachers themselves are very entrepreneurial. I would say the system, though, can be very safe. You are kind of stuck in a route. I could be the best teacher or the worst teacher in the world and get paid the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And my future cap of earnings, I get a 3% raise if I'm lucky every year, and that was it. Right. And teachers are the hardest working in the world.
Amen.
My mom taught for 46 years.
Yeah.
And, she would teach all day and then go home and grade papers all day, maybe watch a television show and go to bed and get up and repeat.
Yep.
And she's just retired this year.
Wow.
And I love my mom, but she said, I'm so bored. I don't have any hobbies. All I've ever done is grade papers.
It's about designing a life you love, right? And we always, I don't know, socialized, right? To think about getting just a job or figuring out how to be secure versus stepping back and designing a life.
Yeah, so for me, I've been in that classroom teaching situation where you taught all day, went home, and you graded papers. But something inside me, I love to create. And so I created great lesson plans. I would put my creativity in that, but somehow it just wasn't enough for me to match what I wanted out of life. So I did a lot of writing, which then got me into the blogging. And so that's how I got into the blogging. And then when I saw the potential of all these other bloggers and the lives that they were leading and just how satisfied they were with their life passion, traveling, if that was their thing, cooking, not my thing, but if that was their thing, and just watching what they were doing, it really kind of lit a fire under me that, I don't have to be stuck in this classroom job. Not that I didn't enjoy it, but it wasn't fulfilling me.
So many people, though, that's so courageous. Like, was there a moment where you just got it, or?
Well, there was a moment, the first one happened when my brother passed away. He passed away at age 41.
Wow.
I was 38. And losing a sibling, there's nothing, I had two brothers, and it was like a third of me was gone.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it really illustrated to me how short life is.
Yeah.
So I was still teaching full-time at that time, but yet feeling this unfulfilled, and I thought, wow, I need to do something if I want to make a change. Life's way too short to be stuck in doing something that is not fulfilling. So that happened about the same time that I was holding the blogging conference and looking around and seeing that, maybe this is something I should be doing full-time. So it took me another 2 years to get financially in a place because I was half the bread earner in our family. Even though I only taught school and got a much less salary, we still needed my money. So it took us, my husband and I, a while to get in that position where I could safely say, all right, we can give it a chance. We can make our mortgage payment for a short period of time, but I've got to figure out what to do.
A little runway.
And I think that's what everybody's most afraid of. When you talk about following your dreams, you're worried about failure. You're worried about, embarrassment, but whatever. But really, bottom line is you want to be able to feed your family and pay your mortgage. So that, I think, is the strongest consideration. So
how do we get to monetization as fast as possible so that we can at least replace this other thing?
Yeah.
And then grow it, right?
Yes.
But you coming out with a monetized product immediately.
Yeah, I was able to, I couldn't completely replace my salary at all, but we had we did certain things like we sold my car so I don't have a car payment. I still don't have a car. Best thing I ever did.
Yeah, so, downsizing so that you can live at this level.
Absolutely. So and it was things that, and the longer I've been doing it, I found out, I really don't need that new outfit. I don't need this. So it's really just cutting back on kind of the superfluous stuff.
Well, and choosing what you do want your life experience to be like, right?
Yes.
Like, if I get to show up in this place that makes me get that face on me, right, and have this kind of joy and impact in people, what's it, what am I willing to give up or to...
It comes down to, you're right, absolutely, valuing what exactly do you want your life to be. Like we had the big, $1 billion lottery. Yeah, I played like everybody else, but at the same time I wrote this blog post about how I probably really don't want to win it because on my bucket list, having $1 billion in the bank is not on it. Instead of, helping others, living a life that allows me to be with my family, those were the things on my bucket list, not having $1 billion in the bank. If that happens as a result, that's fine. But just having $1 billion is not an accomplishment.
So were you always clear on your values?
I think so. I think I credit that to my mom. I really do. She was a child of, her mother grew up in the Great Depression, so was always very, very careful about money, even though she ended up marrying an attorney. And but still they acted like they could go broke at any minute. My mom, she's retired, plenty of money, but she still acts like she could go broke at any minute. So I think I kind of inherited that. I think it was Suze Orman that talked about your values according to money are developed when you're still in elementary school. It's your very early relationship with money and parents' relationship. So I think it does.
Yeah. I just read a great book. Julia Cameron wrote The Prosperous Heart, and she talks about how our beliefs about money, that it's very spiritual, that money has this huge spiritual thing too, that give and take. But so your values, it sounds to me like, so you've had this filter where you could just decide, but the loss of your brother, right, is a wake-up call. And then moving forward, share a few of the inflection points. Like, what have been, since you've made the leap to full-time, what have been some of the key moments where things took off or it was really difficult for you?
Yeah, so, like any entrepreneur, we've had ups and we've had downs. And so my husband and I, because he does Florida Swim Network with me, now we're both entrepreneurs.
Okay, so you're in a husband-wife business.
For Florida Swim Network. For my other two, it's just me, but for Florida Swim Network. And, I have to really categorize, but I've done that my whole life. If I'm, for example, my teaching friends, if I'm out with my blogging friends and I run into my teaching friends, it's like worlds colliding and I'm thrown off my game. If I'm working on FL BlogCon, I am only FL BlogCon, and I might schedule something the same day the same weekend I have a meet or something. So I just have blinders on, which I think works to my benefit because I can be very focused, but at the same time it can be to my detriment if I have a big wall calendar that lets me see everything, so I don't.
All the other venues.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I can put 100% focus on something, but have I got to make sure I'm not messing up my signals with weekends or scheduling. The life of an entrepreneur is just up and down, and there are some days when you're thinking, this is never going to work. We crowdfund some of our swim meets to pay for our crew to go, and there are some meets where we don't have anybody donate at all. And we're like, nobody wants us to come live stream. Do we go and go into the hole to pay our crew, or do we not do it, and then we lose out on the views? And so it's this huge thing. Sometimes it's a risk. Well, let's go do it and see if we can get it sponsored. And there are other times where it's immediately funded, plus we have sponsors. And my husband and I have...
the monetization model.
And my husband and I have a rule that we can't both be down at the same time. And so he knows it's his day to be on. And to say, it's okay, it's all going to work out, this is only temporary. And then there's other days when he's really down, he's like, we just need to sell the business, we just need to be done with it. And I'm like, nope, it's going to be fine, this will pass. So,
the importance of a co-founder, and if you don't have a co-founder, the importance of having that other person that you can talk to, because there are going to be those difficult days, right? What's been one of your biggest wins lately?
So one of our biggest wins, we are going to Rio for the Olympics.
Wow!
Yep. Yeah. So that was a win. But what made it a win was we will be going there not to cover Michael Phelps, even though he will be wonderful. We'll be there covering the swimmers and coaches who are there from the state of Florida.
Okay.
And they may or may not be on the U.S. Olympic team. We have Arkady Vyachinin, who's the Russian bronze medalist that trains here. We have swimmers from all over the world that train here, that we know, that we interact with, that we talk with, that we interview.
So you'll follow Florida stories at the Olympics?
At the Olympics. So there are over 200 private club teams that are teams here in the state of Florida across the state. And those 200 teams voted to fund us to go cover their athletes at the Olympics. A big win for us, not only because it gave us the monetization to be able to go the funding, but it also really validated what we're doing is something that there's a need for and a want for.
Yeah,
so that
your
was
community is like standing behind there. So when it all gets wrapped up for you, what's your why? What's the why behind your ventures and what you spend your time on?
I will say I'm much more fulfilled being in charge of my journey this way versus teaching. And I don't mean to...
And what's the difference for you?
Yeah, so the difference is I choose what I want to do when I want to do it and put as much work. And if I work really hard, ideally, it will end up with a much greater result, whether that's monetary or just a great story. Teaching, and I have the greatest respect for teachers, but you teach the syllabus, and then you take a break for the summer, you come back, you teach the syllabus again, so it can get very repetitive. Even though you're touching, hundreds of lives. It just wasn't for me.
Right.
So fit my life much better. And the other part is being able to tell these stories. I mean, really, and that goes for blogging as well. So I always tell the story of Deborah Boyd, who was a blogger, retired, and she found she couldn't make ends meet. So she was considering going back to work. Unfortunately, she was then diagnosed for a second time with breast cancer. So she knew it was coming, and she's like, oh my gosh, I've got to pay bills, I go through treatment, I've also got to find a job. And she came to actually our blogger conference and learned about the different ways that she could monetize. And she's in a very specific niche. She used to be a cruise director on cruises. And so she blogged about traveling, and she had a very unique look at it. And so she had a great blog. And so she used some of these techniques to monetize. And what it did was it allowed her to be able to stay home, treat her cancer on her own terms, and be able to make ends meet. And to me, when she told me this story a year later, I had not even met her until a year later, and she told me what a difference that had made. And I thought, oh, this is actually changing people's lives. This is actually helping some.
Yeah, so teaching in a different way, right? You're teaching and equipping people to go out and write about their passion and be able to create an economic engine.
Yes, if they want. And that's not everybody's end goal.
Right, not everybody does it. So what are the toughest parts of being an entrepreneur for you?
Trying not to overdo it.
So what does that look like? Like, I mean, how do you...
I would say 5 years ago, I would, before I even got out of bed, would grab my phone and scroll through it to check Twitter, to check Facebook, to see if there's anything I needed to respond to, if there's anything going on. And then my husband and I both would be on our phones, sitting there watching TV, not talking to each other, you know, responding to things on social media. And it may have been for Florida Swim Network, it may have been for FL BlogCon, it may have been for me as Bess Auer, a blogger.
That couple we see at the restaurant who's both on their phone.
Yes, so that was us, but we've actually really tried to cut back on that because we thought this is not healthy. So now I no longer check my phone first thing. I roll out of bed, I eat breakfast, I do a combination of yoga and Pilates for about a half hour before I then sit down and open my MacBook for the first time.
Yeah.
And then during the day, I will take breaks, which was unheard of. I used to think, no, I'll miss something. That FOMO, fear of missing out, you learn that you don't miss out.
FOMO, love that. Fear of missing out, like, right?
You find out that you're not really missing out by putting those boundaries up. And then when my husband gets home at night, we take the dog for a walk and just spend time talking about our day.
Shut it off.
Shut it off. And then I shut my phone off at night. I don't tweet after a certain time.
So what's the difference? How does...
You know, I thought that I would be not only missing out, but I thought it would decrease my productivity, and it really doesn't. It makes me much more focused for the time that I'm doing it. And so I found that I'm actually probably even more productive. So I have a list that I have hanging up, that I have my day list of what I need to get done. And as soon as I start getting sucked into BuzzFeed or something else, I'll get back on that list and want to cross it off. So I think it's made me more productive by reducing the time I spend on it. You know, entrepreneurs seem to think, and I hear this a lot, I'm sure you do, that, you know, if you're not in it 110%, you're not wanting it bad enough. So with Florida Swim Network, we do a lot of podcasting with a lot of the coaches. And we've got a coach in South Florida named Gianluca that is from Italy. And so one of the questions we asked him, what's the difference between coaching in Italy and coaching here in Florida? And he said, Americans work too hard. They think by working harder, they're going to get ahead, and they don't. And we were kind of like, is he talking about us?
Well, you know, it's like as an athlete, like we understood that there was this piece that rest did after you worked hard for the muscles in the body.
Right.
But it's like this obsession, and then the voice in your head, right? And then looking around and seeing our culture that is almost 24/7, always on.
Yeah.
As an athlete, like, right, we were always taught that rest had to come after, that there was something that was going to happen to the muscles and for the long-term success, and you kind of understood that. In our culture right now, and also in the startup entrepreneurial culture, it's like this message. Arianna Huffington, she wrote Thrive, and she talks about collapsing and exhaustion and hitting her head, you know, and about the importance of sleep.
Yes.
Right, like sleep. So do you have other disciplines? So you've started to create boundaries with your technology, times you're not doing it. Anything else that you're doing that's like adding to your happiness with the life of a multi-serial entrepreneur?
Learning to incorporate others into what I'm doing. My husband and I do Florida Swim Network, but we've been able to incorporate several good friends that help us out, either by volunteering to help us out at meets, or some of the swim coaches, will help us out, and allowing them to help us out. So that's been, allowing them to help. And, with Florida Blogging Conference, they say it's mine, but actually I've got this incredible planning team that stepped in starting the second year. And so they have added to my happiness, one, because they light my workload, but two, they offer this great friendship and support. Yeah. And so just feeling that support of other people, it's a big deal.
So building teams.
Yes.
Yeah. So what would you tell your younger starter self? And I mean, what would you go back, at the beginning of your starter journey, what would you say to yourself that you know now?
So I think I would tell my younger self to start even sooner. So I was 40. I was 40 years old before I went out on my own with my own company. And so I think I would go back and tell myself to do it sooner. However, at least in my line of business, those tools weren't available. The internet, blogging, social media that we've really built our businesses on, they weren't available when I was 30.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I could have done it sooner. But in a perfect world, I would start this when I was 25.
Yeah. So what do you think are the myths that people have? So there's probably some people listening to this that are thinking about starting something. They have a passion. They've wanted to do it. So what would you say to the person that's on the fence, that has a lot of voices in their head about starting, about doing what they love, about following their heart, about starting something? What would you say to them?
We call them the naysayers, the voices in our heads. And sometimes it's your own voice that is telling you the loudest, no, you can't do this, or no, you shouldn't do this. So the way that I overcame it when I first started was I found my cheerleaders.
Found your cheerleaders.
I did. I went around and found the people that said, yeah, I think you can do this. Some were on my planning team. One was my husband, thankfully. Another one was my mom, believe it or not. And she surprised me the most because I talked about how she, we're going to go broke at 8 times.
Right. And,
it's not in her nature to be an entrepreneur. She's not an entrepreneur.
To take risks, to step out.
Yes. And, and I think it was my brother's passing as well that affected kind of that change in her to where she said, you know what? I think you should do it. I think you should try it and go for it. And so with that support, I went for it. But I'm also a big fan of those quotes. The longest journey starts with one step, those inspirational quotes. And one of my favorite poems, and this was actually one of my favorite poems when I was teaching school. I taught Rudyard Kipling, and I made my students memorize the If poem. If you can keep your head when all about you, so are doubting you. It's a majorly powerful poem. Are you familiar with it?
I have seen it. Do you have it memorized?
I used to, because I made my kids. I have certain verses. I have certain verses memorized. If you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, there's all these little gems in there. And I can usually find when I'm upset or depressed about something, I can find something about that poem. And generally it's that if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same, because when things are going great, they're going great, but you know what? It can end at any moment. And when things are really bad, that too will pass.
Yeah, and on that note, that is some great advice. So we can find you on Florida Blog Con, if we want to go to a blogging conference and learn more.
You want to go to it, so we actually have it at gottagetblogging.com is the website where you would find it. You can always find me on Twitter, Bess_Auer, and then you can always find me at floridaswimnetwork.com.
Awesome. And you can hit up PamHoelzle.com to find more about how to start something, and check us out on iTunes at the Dear Rockstar podcast. Thank you for being with us. And go ahead, you guys start something.
Definitely.